Hey all, this is 01 Tuboku, and I'm coming at you again with another short review of... Yeah, if you guys can see it, show you that cover, and thinking I'm looking in my direction. I gotta remember, I gotta show you towards the camera. Yep, coming at you with another review of, for what I do for the short reviews, Fullmetal Alchemist, the original. And yes, with this, as is again, with the short review, we are on the next episode of that, which is Night of the Chimera's Cry, episode 7. And let's see, what can I say about this episode? This episode is where everything culminates ahead to the Elrics. You had Edward become a state alchemist, and young, he gets his pocket watch. He goes back to the of Tucker's to celebrate. They hang out with Nina, they study some more, do what they essentially need to do. And overall in this episode, we see, Tucker get more desperate. As Tucker's getting desperate, there's a thing where, Nina does a drawing of her mom, dad, and Alexander together. Edward, who's taking Alexander for a walk the next morning, notices that Tucker burns this picture, and this burning of the family picture has Edward looking into Tucker from the Alchemaic State Library. He asks Ms. Hughes about it, and everybody gives a conflicting story. Like, either Edward can't get the information because it comes from the top generals, or, like how Mace Hughes, Colonel Hughes tells him that, his wife died before he came to Central, and he learned from Hughes himself that, his wife left them because, she didn't want to be poor, he wasn't there, but he gave the idea that the wife came to Central, and that, Nina also said that she came to Central with them. So, there's all these conflicting reports. This basically boils down to Edward and somewhat Alphonse, not completely Alphonse, but mostly Edward and Alphonse a little bit, searching into Tucker's past. Tucker gets, he seems like he's getting desperate, looks like he doesn't want to, disappoint his daughter himself or anything else, and he wants to see what he can do. As the Elrics start digging, Brigadier General Boscaran, we finally get to, we saw him in the background in the last couple episodes, but we finally get to see him full fleshed out coming into this. He basically stops the Elrics in their tracks from looking at any information, says, you're not allowed here anymore, kicks them out, and, on a hunch, he also tells, Boscaran tells Tucker that the Fuhrer and Mustang have this Elric boy in their pocket. What are you going to do for me? You have to give me something good for a Chimera or alchemic skill, or you and your family are going to become poor and you're going to lose all that you have, and I'm not, taking another bullet for you. So Show Tucker, in his desperation here, gets things together, and once nobody can do, Nina notices something's up. She's already been saddened by the Elrics getting, kicked out of their house and having to go elsewhere. And, she's wondering what can happen. She wants to help her dad. She looks really sad. She's curious. And then you have, Tucker just embrace Nina. And, the last word he says to her is Nina. The Elrics, as you can imagine, sneak back in because they can... Edward's worried about Show Tucker, and they also consider Nina a friend. And I think in many ways at that time they considered Tucker a possible friend too. And Edward was hoping he was going to be wrong about what he wanted to discover, because I don't think he wanted to know that Tucker was capable of doing an atrocity that he was thinking of. And, they get into his house. They see in his basement / dungeon looking thing, because it looks like a dungeon thing, but I'm pretty sure it's just his basement. They find all the chimeras, all the weird-looking creatures he's created. And when they get there, they see the dog that looks like the little girl Nina, basically, I just said it. It looks like Nina. It's got long hair, doesn't really have any irises, which is like weird pale-looking eyes, and looks also like Alexander as a dog. And Edward, I believe, knows right away. Alphonse is sort of getting it but doesn't understand. And then you have Edward asking him the questions, when did your wife leave? When did you get your certification? And these questions. And at that point, Shout Tucker's like, well, you kids know I might as well let this whole cat out of the bag. And that just sets Edward off. Edward, wails on Tucker. Tucker starts giving his explanation saying, you're like me. You had, discovered things. You tried to transmute your mother and all these terrible things. You're like me. You did so for the sake of progress. Where for the Alrics, it wasn't the sake of progress. If you guys remember, they wanted to bring their mother back at any cost. But Shout Tucker's thinking, you did it for progress because you could. And in a way, I said, Jarek, who will probably be with me for the full review on this coming soon, he said that they were different, that it was a different thing. And I'm like, well, yeah, it is a different thing, Jarek, but the Elrics did what they did out of desperation to see their mother again. So they did it to see if they could bring her back, and they didn't think they could suffer the consequences. So it's not exactly like Shout Tucker, but Shout Tucker was making a point that, in a sense, not completely, but they still did something they shouldn't have done, just like Tucker did what he could have done. But Tucker did it, and he admitted that, he didn't do it because, he was worried about the risks of what could happen to Nina or Alexander. He did it because he wanted to know if he could do it for the advancement of science and for, I'm going to also say, his own greed, because he could keep his house. He said those things and did those things. He's probably like thinking, well, my daughter technically is alive, so I still didn't do anything bad here. That's how nutty Tucker was throughout this entire thing. But, Edward wails on him. Alphonse, in a way, gets him to stop. Also, Nina interferes, grabbing his coat, saying, don't hurt Daddy, don't hurt Daddy. And, the dog goes, don't hurt Daddy. Why does it hurt here? Want to play, Edward? And it's just this terrible, terrible thing. I should also know how Tucker finally came clean about knowing what happened to the Elrics is Edward was investigating a murder that he was asked to come along with Colonel Hughes when he was talking about Tucker's wife. And then, he sees this woman, and this dead body and this child just, grabbing at the cloth that the woman was covered by. The child removes the cover of the cloth, the blanket, and, they see this dead body of a woman, blood on her everywhere. Edward has PTSD of his own mother, passes out, wakes up back at Tucker's estate, and, Tucker basically confirms that, you were calling out your mother. You and your brother tried to transmute her, didn't you? And so I wanted to make the connection of that, too, but that's what also led to this. And sadly, Boss Gran shows up and, they tell him the truth of what happened. They arrest, I keep wanting to say Harold, but they arrest Tucker. They arrest Shout Tucker, and they take Nina with them. And they want the Elrics to keep quiet about it. Edward's not having this. They stop Edward, but Edward still uses his alchemic ability by, smacking his hands to the ground, creating the alchemy without the circle again. It causes the street to be uplifted and the car to crash. Luckily, Nina, and I do believe Tucker as well, were okay, but Nina runs off. Also, Nina runs into Scar. If you remember, we saw Scar in the previous episode where he was wondering about his arm. And Scar sees, Nina, and he kills her as a mercy killing. And I think the way they did it in the original, unlike Brotherhood, which was more towards the manga, and Brotherhood was like the manga, you had Nina who was, sad what happened to her dad. I think she still would have been sad if her dad was killed, but in this one, they went with her being frightened and not understanding. And I don't know if Nina would have wanted to die here, but, Scar looks at it as a mercy killing her. And Edward, Alphonse come upon it. They see the blood, horrified by what they're seeing. And it just ends with the credits rolling, and they show a nice compilation clip of Nina and everything else. And overall, this episode really tugs at the heartstrings, as you can tell by what I gave. Tugs at the heartstrings, was greatly paced, great effort, great visualizations. The animation was great. The acting was superb. I can get into that right now. Again, Edward Edward, Vic Mignogna, Romy Paku, Alphonse, Aaron Dismuke, Rie Kugamiya. Great performances from the main characters. Tucker, Chuck Huber, and oh, oh no, Tanaka. I hope I spelled it right. I did a lot of crossing out here. Tanaka Nagai, who played Tucker. Japanese and English is very good, but I give the edge to Chuck Huber a little bit in that one. Nina, Brina Palencia, Satomi Karagi. Very emotional, heartfelt scenes. Great work from her. Let's see here. Who else? And well, I'll also say too, it was nice to see Scar, Damian Clark, Rio Taro, Okiayu, who did Scar and do some great work as that character. But I must say that, the characters I got to give it to the most are Edward, Alphonse, Tucker, and Nina, because those voice actors did a great job really getting the emotion revved up, and just, the animation, everything went together so well in this episode. And it just, again, the ending animation, which was a tribute where they showed parts where they changed it up, where Nina, Alexander, Edward, Alphonse were all playing together and they're all doing things together, and it ended where it seemed like Alexander and Nina are sort of like in a heavenly setting, and she's laying on him, and he's nuzzled up to her, and they're like comforting each other. Very nice, and I'm getting a little emotional thinking about it. Very nice and very heartfelt thing. But again, what do you guys think of this episode? Leave a comment down below. Let me know, and let's get this discussion going. And so until then, guys, I will see ya. This has been 012 Boku.